The blade spun through a half-circle, and then the gears banged again, sending a shudder through the length of the aircraft. The man in the cockpit used the primer again. The propeller went on turning, its 3 blades swinging slowly. Then suddenly they became invisible as the engine fired on all 12 and blue gas exploded from the exhaust stubs, whipping away in the slipstream. The man on the ground called something, but the word was lost in the beat of sound. He doubled under the wing, yanking the starter lead out, taking the trolley-ack clear. The leading aircraftman at the controls drew the hood shut and set the warming-up revs and pulled a paperback novel out of his overalls, opening it at the page where he had dog-eared it. With more noise beating round him than 100 voices could ever make, he began to read, undisturbed. Other machines, dispersed somewhere in the desert of the mist, were being started up. The sun was clearing the fringe of pines along the hill that made the east horizon, and the station was losing its camouflage, building by building. Small vans moved round the perimeter road, now without lights. A spidery flock of bicycles was going down towards the armoury. A corporal came out of the B-flight huts and met the man who had brought back the trolley-ack. "Who's that in 343? "Cornelius. I thought he was reporting sick this morning." "I wouldn't know." Corporal Newman cupped his hands to a wuff who was hauling a trolley-ack. "For Christ's sake, put some oil on that thing." The squealing stopped. He looked back at the fitter. "There's a kite coming in from A-flight. Can you cope with the DI?" "Fair enough." Preble went into the crew room and stood by the window watching 343. He was thinking, every time that prop goes round, it's a bit nearer the end of the war. He was, so far, one of the lucky ones who hated the war simply because it was uncomfortable. He listened to the Irks talking behind him until the propeller of 343 slowed, idling with an uneven windmill motion. He went to the door, calling out, 2-6! Belt! What for? On the tail, come on! 3 of them followed him out, running across the perimeter road to 343. In the cockpit, Cornelius watched the mirror, and when the 4 of them were sitting hunched on the tail of the Spitfire, he pulled the hood shut, braced the stick back hard, and opened the throttle, taking it progressively as far as the gate, and then testing for mag drop and boost. On the tail, Preble sat with his arms hooked around the man next to him, his head down and eyes squeezed shut. His cap held over his face to shield it from the blast of the slipstream. His eardrums were blanked off. His lungs took in the stench of the exhaust gas. His body trembled in unison with the trembling of the machine. For Preble, tail squatting was, so far, the worst part of the war, but it no longer frightened him. He had grown used to the thought that this aircraft was running at normal peak revs and would be flying at 400 miles per hour if it weren't held to the face of the earth by the man in the cockpit and the chocks and the brakes and the 4 men squatting on the tail. He had grown used to the sound of this, and that was the worst, the sound and the battering of the wind. They made a violence that was awesome in itself, without the actual thought of physical danger. He sat without any conscious thought at all, giving himself to this tumult while it lasted. Cornelius brought the throttle back with his left hand, his right arm clamped round the control column as it shuddered, straining to flick forwards and send the machine pitching on its nose. The revs died. He switched off. The blades windmilled slowly and then stopped, knocking against the gears. The men dropped off the tail, opening their eyes like boxers recovering. Already the fitter in 524 was yelling for them. They bundled across the grass to the next concrete bay and climbed onto the tail, 4 professional squatters, feeling themselves more useful than 4 sandbags, only because sandbags were not so mobile. Cornelius got down from 343, and Corporal Newman met him halfway to the flight office. "She okay?" "Yes, less than 50 mag drop each." Newman was looking at 524 as the fitter ran her up. He said, "You said you were going sick this morning, didn't you?" "I scrubbed round it." Cornelius put a piece of chewing gum into his mouth. "We don't want you flaking out again." "That was having no lunch." "Well, you'd better watch yourself, Ken. You might fall into a propeller next time, and they're expensive." "I don't like you much either." He went off to the blister hangar, where there was a 7-hour inspection lined up.